What's going on, you guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at some rare iPhones on eBay and trying to find the best deals in 2022. Just want to give you guys a heads up. This is going to be my last video of 2022. Thank you guys so much for all the support that you guys have shown my channel. Let's get right into this video. By the way, a portion of this video is sponsored by Squarespace. You guys can build the perfect website for your business. More on that later in this video. Okay, so first of all, we are going to be looking at a couple of eBay listings that I have over here. The first one is a lot of 3 Apple iPhone 5s 16GB models. Just to sort of click on this photo, it gives you guys a better idea of what we have here. So it looks like we have a little iPhone 5s. This one looks like it's not on iOS 7 because it doesn't have these slides set up. However, these two here do have these slides set up, but it's hard to confirm whether these are on iOS 7, iOS 8, or iOS 9. It's a little hard to tell from the lock screen. But as you guys can see, it looks like it's in fairly good condition. All the accessories have been included. It's hard to tell if these have been repackaged, if these phones have ever actually been used, but for a price of $140 basically, it's not a terrible deal. As you guys can see a little more on this little listing, this is a lot of 3 Apple iPhone 5s's. All 3 phones have been factory reset and have no SIM cards. With that being said, they're used phones. Okay, so there we go. We don't know if these phones have been updated, but they definitely have been factory restored. Is this a good deal? It's hard to say. I would probably ask the seller to set them up and see which iOS version they're actually running, but otherwise it doesn't look too exciting. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next phone that I want to show you guys is actually an iPhone 6s on iOS 9, and yes, I did make a little list of everything here, but you guys might have noticed that this thing has been sold, and I was actually the one to buy this phone, so unfortunately it's not available, but I wanted to show you guys a little bit more about this phone and why this listing is kind of important. So for those who don't know, the iPhone 6s cannot be activated on iOS 9 for whichever reason. I actually made a video about this, I think like a year ago, so I'll have that link somewhere at the top right, but yeah, it's basically an issue specifically to A9 devices, so the iPhone 6s, the iPhone 6s Plus, and the iPhone SE first generation. And this is basically what happens every time you try to activate it. It just says activation error, and there have been some people who have been able to activate this phone on iOS 9 using different types of SIM cards, and for a price of $30, I said, why not? Might as well try it out. I have a lot of different SIM cards sitting at home, and if this thing is unlocked, then we can definitely try to play around with it and see if we can actually get this thing to set up. Worst case scenario, if this thing does not activate, we can always just factory reset it through iTunes and update it to iOS 15, and that'll basically bring it to its latest software update. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to keep this on iOS 9 because I definitely want to experiment with this phone, because it's kind of like an interesting phenomenon with these specific devices. They just cannot be activated, and there's no public reason made by Apple as to why this cannot be done. So it's an interesting device. As you guys can see, the seller has listed it for parts and not working, and when we click on the description, it's just like a generic store, so they just have like shipping and a notes label and just a little more product details, so nothing too specific about the device, but definitely something I'm going to look into once this device gets to my house. Okay, so the next device that I have here is also an iPhone 6s on iOS 9. I did not buy this one specifically because it's $50. It's a little pricey for an iPhone that cannot activate, and this seller has actually had this iPhone up on eBay for more than a year, I'm pretty sure. I remember seeing this device pop up like a year ago, so maybe a lot of people just aren't buying it, and I don't blame them. I do not recommend you guys buy this because I did try messaging the seller and they weren't really that cooperative, and also $50 is a lot, so there's also no option to put an offer on this thing. But I will say over time you guys might see more of these pop up, and if you guys do, feel free to DM them to me on Instagram. I'll let you guys know if it's a good deal or not, but yeah, this is definitely not a good deal. Do not buy this one. Okay, so the next listing here is a little interesting. This one has actually already sold out. I wasn't the one who bought this, but this one is very interesting because there is basically a lot of 7 Apple iPhone 4s models, and it's only $40, which is pretty cheap. But what's really interesting about here is that if you look at the last phone, it literally looks like it's running iOS 5, and you can easily tell because it has like the original YouTube app on there, the old music icon, and some might say this might be iOS 6, but it's not, because in iOS 6, the YouTube app was pretty much gone because that's when the contract with YouTube ended, so they just ended up removing the app from the phone. And there's a lot of other iPhone models on here as well, which look pretty interesting. It's hard to tell which iOS version they're running, but for $40 to get 7 iPhone 4s models and one that's guaranteed to run iOS 5 is a pretty good deal. So that's why I always say look at lots, because sometimes sellers might not know what iOS version they're running and how much they're worth, so definitely worth looking at when you guys come across a lot on eBay. Alright, now the next part of this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to identify an iOS version without necessarily seeing the version number in the settings app. This is pretty useful for when you're buying old iPhone products. But before we do that, let's take a quick second to talk about today's video sponsor, Squarespace. They have some beautiful website templates that you can use to really make your websites pop out. Squarespace offers many different options, whether you're a business, a student, someone simply looking to create their portfolio. There's so many different options to choose from. If you're a business, you can also set up a store, which is super easy to maintain. You can also send out custom emails using their email templates, which is really nice to see. And to top it off, you can also register a custom domain, which is very useful for branding. Head over to squarespace.com, and once you're ready to go live, you guys can use code iClassic to get up to 10% off your purchase of a website or domain. Okay, so like I mentioned, I did want to talk a little bit more about how to identify the iOS version without actually seeing which iOS version it's running in settings, because you know, when you're on eBay, a lot of sellers are not going to show this little page, and that's kind of annoying, but there are little cheat codes that you guys can use. The first way to tell if an iPhone is running iOS 7 is to simply look at the home screen. So on iOS 7, there's an app called Passbook, and this app is also the same as Wallet, but it was called Passbook back in the day, and this app basically has like 3 layers to it. So the first layer, as you guys can see, is orange, the second layer is green, and the third layer is blue. So as long as it only has 3 layers and not 4 layers, that means it's running iOS 7. Another easy way to check, of course, is with this background. This is the standard iOS 7 background, and one of my favorite ways to check is through the lock screen, but do not be fooled by the slide to unlock, because slide to unlock exists from iOS 7 up to iOS 9. So it could either be iOS 7, 8, or 9, so just keep that in mind. But the easiest way to tell is the Passbook app. Okay, so now let's move on to iOS 8, and by the way, this is literally like one of my first iPhones in my entire collection, the iPhone 6. I think this is like one of my first videos that I even made on this channel. It was about this phone. Definitely very nostalgic there. But yeah, this one is running iOS 8. Again, a very simple way to tell if this is running iOS 8 is to simply look at the Passbook app. As you guys can see, now we have 4 layers. So 4 layers means that it's running iOS 8. The 4th layer is basically red. So if you see a little bit of red at the top of the Passbook app, that means it's running iOS 8. And another way to tell, of course, is through the Newsstand app. I'm pretty sure that was introduced in iOS 8 because it was not on iOS 7. But other than that, of course, we have the space background. Slide to unlock still exists. And interesting thing about iOS 8 though is that when you turn the lock screen on, the slide to unlock starts immediately. So there's no delay, you see it immediately. But if you look at the iPhone 5S on iOS 7, it takes a little while for the slide to unlock to appear. I'll do that again. Actually, it appeared for the first time there. Turn that back on, and there's usually like a little delay. So that's really small. You're not going to notice that on an eBay listing because that can only be noticed through video. So yeah, I mean, maybe if someone sends you a video of the phone, that's something to look out for. But on iOS 8, as you guys can see, the slide to unlock appears right away. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Let's move on to iOS 9. Okay, so now let's talk about iOS 9. Of course, I have my little iPod Touch right over here. One of the easiest ways to tell if a device is running iOS 9 is to first look at the home screen. One app that you're going to notice here is called the Wallet app. As you guys can see, it is no longer called Passbook. This was basically replaced by the Passbook app. It's now called Wallet. And another thing to look out for is Apple TV. So Apple TV was actually an app that came out in iOS 10. So as long as there's no Apple TV on the first page of the home screen, then you should be good. But also consider the fact that on iOS 9, the little App Store icon had a little circle around it, and same with the iTunes Store icon. This circle was removed in iOS 11, but as you guys can see, we do have the circles here. There's the Wallet app, but there's no Apple TV. You can even ask the seller to show you a photo of the second page of the home screen to see if there is an Apple TV app anywhere. Maybe it's hiding somewhere, but the default Apple operating system does put the Apple TV icon on the very first page of the home screen. And yes, my iPod Touch just died. I literally charged this thing up. This thing does not hold a charge. But yeah, that's a very easy way to tell if this thing is running iOS 9. Let's move on to iOS 10. Okay, now last but not least, we have the iPhone 7 on iOS 10. I'm actually only going to go up to iOS 10 because iOS 11 isn't like too nostalgic yet. I'll probably make more videos on that later on next year. But there are very easy ways to identify iOS 11 and up. But for now, we're going to be going up to iOS 10 only. Now, one of the major distinctions here, of course, is that we have the Apple TV app, and this is usually placed right on the home screen on the very first page. So as long as the seller posts a photo of the home screen and it has this little app here and maybe has circular signal bars at the top left, it's likely they won't have a SIM card in this device because, well, it's a very old device and they probably aren't using like an active data plan on it or anything like that. So it's very common that these will say no SIM at the top left, but overall, Apple TV is definitely a very easy giveaway. Another way to tell is that in iOS 10, they actually got rid of the slide to unlock and it was replaced with press home to unlock, which is very easily identifiable. So yeah, that's an easy way to tell iOS 10 apart from iOS 9, and hopefully that helps you guys out. And yeah, that's basically identifying iOS versions without actually seeing which iOS version they're running. It's not always going to be 100% accurate, but it's definitely very, very useful. Maybe if you guys want to like save this video, maybe send to someone who might be interested, feel free. It'll definitely help a lot of people out in the community. But yeah, that basically wraps up my very last video of 2022. I honestly really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I just want to say, guys, thank you for all the support that you guys show me on this channel. You know, just looking back at like the last 365 days, we got like almost 15 million views, which is insane to think about. I did not think I would ever be here. Thank you guys so much for all the support that you guys show me. I love making videos like these, and I'm really excited for 2023 and everything that I have in store for you guys. But yeah, I just wanted to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all of those who celebrate, and I'll see you guys next year in 2023. Catch you guys on the next one.